Hello, darlings. You've all heard of Marilyn Monroe.
Welcome back, darlings. I'm TV host, entertainment journalist Cognac Wellerlane, and we are just about to do a fascinating Zoom interview with creative writer and podcast host Miriam Silver. She is going to talk about all kinds of fabulous metaphysical subjects and her as an intuitive, and of course her two books that she has just written. So let's take a look at this fascinating interview with Ms. Miriam Silver. Welcome back, darlings. I'm TV host, entertainment journalist Cognac Wellerlane, and I have a very, very special guest. She is a podcast host, she's a creative writer, and her name is Miriam Silver, but everybody calls her Mimi. I love Mimi because Mimi sounds so French, and you know I love French. Mimi, darling, welcome to my fabulous pink kitchen. As you can see, pink is my favorite color.
Well, pink is also my favorite color. It's always been my
Really?
favorite. Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
And you live like in the perfect place where pink is very acceptable because it's a beautiful pastel color, or it can be a very vibrant hot color. And Florida is all about beautiful pink shades of fabulous pink, light pink, pastel pink, and hot pink.
And corals.
And corals too. Yes. So now I am going to tell my audience a little bit about you before we get into the questions. Miriam Silver, as a creative writer, podcast host, and avid researcher on paranormal, metaphysical, and spiritual topics, Miriam Silver has produced several independent shows for over 15 years. She is now a licensed level aromatherapist, spiritual healer, shamanic practitioner, creative writer, artist, and ardent lover of animals and nature. Miriam continues on her personal quest to expand her understanding of the human experience. From an early age, a passion grew and led her to delve deeply into understanding the human experience. And because of it, Miriam began a personal spiritual journey, having been born with an artistic, sensitive, and empathetic nature. Art and reading were a means of escape from a family life of trauma and dysfunction. And with her recent experience with healing from Hodgkin's lymphoma, some new insights have deepened. And also her connection to our spiritual roots. Miriam now brings her years of spiritual learning, experience, and observation to a new podcast called Rev Up and Awaken. And the focus is awakening the self to remembering its spiritual connection. You are a fascinating lady, a fascinating lady. Now, my first question is basically like what I always ask people, you know, what inspires them and all. But I want you to tell my audience, how old were you when you realized you had this special talent of being intuitive?
Well, you know, I find that that's a natural part of who we are. So when I was a child, I sensed things all the time. I was just like I was like there was just like I was like an open wound. I could just like feel anything around me. So sometimes I could sense when something's about to happen. I can sense whatever was going on in the environment I was living in, my family, so the psychic aspect of ourselves is a very natural thing. Some of us are more open to it than others. And between my mother, my sister, and I, we were the psychic ones in the family.
Yes,
and,
I was doing a little research on you,
yeah.
and I saw in your past interview with this doctor.
Oh, Paul Mekas.
Yes, and you said that your mother was psychic, but do you recall a specific age maybe that you?
I just remember like. I could, I remember experiences when I was in my early teens.
What about when you were like really little, like maybe 3, 4, 5, maybe 10?
I know that I was very sensitive to everything that was going on around me, because of all the things that were going on in my family life. I felt this insecurity and emotional, like everything was like haphazard. I didn't feel like I was in a family that felt secure. Now, I feel that that's part of the psychic awareness as well, because we are all, that's a part of us. That's an aspect of us that's all innate in us. We think it's just a part of our brain, and the how we grow up, in our family life. But I felt like there was just like, I don't know. The trouble is when you're that young, you can't really verbalize and put it into language what you're feeling. So
right.
I just remember like flashbacks of sensing certain things, back then when I was a child.
Well, they say when people are psychic more than other people, there's people that are really, very psychic. They're very sensitive to a lot of different things, extremely sensitive.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just felt like the things that my parents were going, because obviously, everything, all the dysfunction revolves around your family, units, your parents.
Well, your parents, were they like, was it the dysfunction in the family as a result of your parents? Like, were they fighting a lot, or what was? Well, can you tell us?
These were symptoms. Yeah, fighting, screaming. These were symptoms of it. There was screaming matches. Sometimes hitting. It would always revolved around not having enough money. The insecurities were, and the fear based on those insecurities were very thick in the air, living in that. So even to this day, it's so important for me to have like comfort when it comes to living, because I don't want to feel like I can go back to those days, which I don't want to relive. And that's probably the reason why I got into spirituality, because a part of me was looking for something that made me realize the power that we all have within us. And in society, we're not taught that we're powerful beings. We're constantly pushed upon that we're lower than, that there's always somebody bigger and better than you, that somebody has more than you, and therefore, they deserve it more than you. We are all worthy of having an incredible, wonderful, loving, abundant life. But in society, there's always, how they always say, like, you got the haves, you got the have-nots. But there shouldn't be that crevice, that cavern between these two divisions, because we all, each of us on both sides has the same abilities, has the same power within ourselves to create that. And that's what I've been, I guess that's been like a mission of mine throughout my life, to learn about this, to be able to share with others, to help other people see it in themselves, and to realize.
Well, there's always, I don't mean to interrupt you, but there always is like, Facebook and Instagram, they're all so very pretentious, and it's always like a competition thing.
I know.
People are always competing, and people always think that the other person's life is better than theirs, but You and I know, darling, that's not the case.
Exactly.
It's not the case. Everybody has their own struggles. And
Mm-hmm.
even if you see somebody that's very wealthy, or they seem to have it all, the beautiful house, and the family and the husband and all, everybody has some kind of struggle that they deal with.
Sure.
No one's life is a 100% perfect. Yeah, there are people that are very lucky, like you and myself. I consider myself very lucky. I'm also very grateful for everything that I have in life. And that's so important, that we not only do we know but that we actually are grateful.
Well, having a good life stems from having a very spiritual foundation, a very strong spiritual foundation.
Do you consider yourself more spiritual, or do you consider yourself religious?
Not religious at all. No, because
me too. I'm more spiritual like you.
Yeah, because I always find the doctrines that a lot of the religious, the beliefs tend to be based on a lot of fear. And I don't like going near anything that's fear-based. Society has enough fear in it. I really don't need to have anything like pressed into my mind more so on a fear-based level. But I find that, we all come into this world with missions and agendas of what we want to accomplish. And sometimes going through these things, let's say the struggles in life, helps us to gain and grow and expand ourselves spiritually. Because if sometimes a person is not going to expand if they got like a perfect, whatever society thinks is a perfect lifestyle, sometimes you need to have something that opens up your heart chakra to expand your consciousness, because that helps to expand yourself vibrationally. And it's more important now than ever, because we have so much that's being filtered through us on a fear-based level. And we need to really get in touch with that spiritual aspect of ourselves, so it's very important,
Now, have you, as we speak, and you're telling me about your intuitiveness, have you ever had a paranormal experience? Have you ever spoken to a spirit, or have you ever seen a spirit?
Well, how like some people are, clairaudient, clairvoyant,
right.
all those different aspects. I will feel, I can sometimes hear, sometimes it happens, it depends. Sometimes on the side of my eye, I will see figures going back and forth. That's happened to me. What
is that? Why do people see it on an angle, like on the side?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
You know why? We're not seeing through our physical eye. We're seeing through the third eye. That's why. So when we're looking through our physical, and some people are able to see in front of them, but it's mainly because they're perceiving the information from their third eye level. That's so if
you're seeing like a shadow or a figure on the side, I've even seen that. I have seen that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're actually seeing an entity, like a spirit.
Yeah. And of course, it's so quick, because when you see it on your side, all of a sudden you turn to it, and naturally you're not going to see it with your physical eye. So it could be like a quick experience. Also, I've had a lot of paranormal experiences where, for instance, I'll give you an example. My pets are very important to me. I love animals, and that's the way it's going to be for the rest of my life. I have a very strong connection to pets. So several years ago, I had a pet named Frankie. He was a little tabby cat, and he ended up with a tumor on his liver. And at that point, I had no other choice but to put him to sleep, So it was so painful, it's like, putting any being, one that you love to sleep is like, it's heart-wrenching, So
I had to do that too. It only happened once, where I had to put a dog to sleep. I had to put my Fifi to sleep, and it broke my heart.
It is. It's very hard. And so what happened was that After coming back from the vet, I'm out home. My other cat, Gracie, was, in the bedroom with me. She was, I could always tell when they're trying to give you some comfort because they know, something has happened. They know that their little partner is not there anymore. So I was lying in bed, just like feeling the grief of it. And then all of a sudden I hear these little meows coming from the next room. Now, Gracie was sitting very quietly in my bed. Both of us heard it. We both looked up very quickly in the vicinity of where it was coming from. Mm-hmm. And I knew it sounded just like Frankie's voice. I knew it was his meow.
Wow.
And I sensed that he was basically, probably just like connecting with me, letting us know that, physically he may not be there, but spiritually he is. And I happen to believe, and this came as a revelation to me many years ago, that every time we have a pet, first of all, pets are healing. They're very healing for us. That's the reason why they come into our lives. They're healing companions. They help us through especially a lot of struggles, emotional struggles in our lives.
Yes, absolutely.
But also the fact is, because they live such short lives, they have to, it's almost as if they have to leave that physical body and then they come back again, because they know that their job is not over and they come back to you in some other form. It could be another cat, it could be a dog, it could be some other form of an animal. But that animal, somehow you are going to find that animal. Like Gracie, who's my little part-time Siamese, she is a reincarnation of another cat that I had named Eddie. They both had the same attributes. The only thing that got different is the fact that they look differently and they're different gender. That's it, So I feel, because she has so many of the same qualities that Eddie had. And so I feel this very deep connection on a spiritual level with animals in nature. And that's one of the things that most likely drew me to the shamanic experiences. And I feel that it's a very strong, it's because nature is a very high vibrational level of consciousness. So when you're very connected to it, you're gaining a higher level of consciousness, expanded level of consciousness. You're much more open. You feel things more deeply. Your innate spiritual skills and abilities are much more accessible to you. Mm-hmm. And that's where, and many of us can strive throughout our lives to gain that expansion. Some of us will have it during a very early part of our lives. Maybe we'll be cut off from it and then come back to it on some level. But we always have that connection because it's a part of us. We're not just like this physical envelope. We're right. Energy, and we're energy in this envelope.
Right. I have to tell you about my experience, because I recently lost my pet, one of my pets. Mm-hmm. I had a Yorkie. Her name was Jaja, and she was very, very close to my husband. And of course, I have Gigi. She's a poodle. And what happened was Jaja lived to be, I think she was like 16, 17. I don't think she quite made it to 18 years old. I don't think she made it. But my dogs live a very long time because I baby them. I take mm-hmm. very good care of them. Yeah. And she had a lot of health issues, a lot of health problems. And she died in the house, right. Jaja. So, of course, we took her to the vet after she died. We wrapped her up in a blanket. We took her to the vet when she died. And the vet cremated her. And she was away at the vet for a while. We had to pick up her ashes. And my Fifi, who's the poodle, she wouldn't eat for like a whole week. She would not eat. She was, you could see she was probably depressed or mourning or whatever it was, So then the vet called us and said, the ashes are ready. You can come pick up your ashes. We picked up the ashes, right? We brought them into the house. Mm-hmm. And Gigi was like a different dog. She was eating again. She was playing again. I seem to think, I know this, I don't know, you're intuitive, so you probably would understand this. I seem to think that the spirit of Jaja came to Gigi and said, "Pal, I'm here. I'm here. I'm in the house. Don't worry about us. I'm here."
Yeah.
And because why would she be okay? How does she know we brought the ashes back? Why would she start eating again? This was the day we brought the ashes back and we put them in the house. She was like happy again. So
right.
that makes me think that, you know, the spirit of Jaja came to Gigi and said, "It's okay, pal. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here in the house with you now."
Yeah.
What do you think?
Animals are very psychic themselves, you know, because they're able to see spirits around them one way or the other.
Oh,
So,
that's another thing. There have been times that Gigi was on my lap and she's barking at something. And I'm saying, she's looking into like the hallway.
Right.
And I'm saying, "What are you barking at? There's nothing there." But it had to be an energy or something. Maybe she saw my father. My father's deceased. I don't know what she was looking at, but she kept barking and barking. And then finally she settled down. But what was she barking at? It was in the middle of the night. It was dark. There was no noises outside. So I'm thinking to myself, she must have saw some kind of an energy or spirit or something like that. That's all I can think of.
They're more connected to that people always call it a veil. I always consider it another dimension, that level of consciousness where once you've left your physical body, you go to that level of consciousness that's mainly spirit and energy. And what people don't realize is that both of those levels of consciousness, the physical and the spiritual, is very close by each other. It overlaps one another. So it's not as if we have to feel like we never ever see our loved ones again. They're always around us and we're always around them. So, and they're able to, what's the word? Project themselves. I want to use it's like there's so many different types of words in the physical language. It's so hard.
I've heard stories where people have told me that they were almost in a fatal car crash and their brother that was deceased or their father that was deceased came to them and something happened that saved their life. And they said to me it was because my father or my sister or my mother or somebody that was deceased that was close to them actually protected them. But I want to get into another question, and that is, now I know you believe in reincarnation. From my research, and of course we're talking about it now, do you remember like a significant past life experience?
There's a few that are I see it overlapped in my present life constantly.
Me too.
And I always tell people that if you walk into a person's house, look at all the items that they have around the house, whether it's statues, whether it's books, whatever it is, you will get a sense of what those people were in past lives.
That's me.
Yeah.
You come in my house, everything is French provincial, right? So you know I lived during the French Revolution, absolutely. And why do I like to wear wigs? And how come all my wigs are white? And also
in that time period they wore white wigs.
And I wear a lot of eye makeup. So I'm convinced that some friend of mine, she's also believes in all this stuff. She says, "You were the bomb." Meaning like you were somebody, in those two other lives that you lived in. So I'm convinced that I lived during the French Revolution and I also lived in Egypt. Because, I love anything Egyptian. I love Egyptian art. I love the stories of Egypt. I mean, like Cleopatra's like my favorite movie. And I wear my hair like because the Egyptians wore wigs too. And I didn't know this when I started studying about Egyptians and that they used to shave. I don't think the women shaved their hair, but the men did. But they used to wear wigs. And they used to wear a lot of eye makeup. And the
Oh,
reason
sure.
why they wore the eye makeup was to protect their eyes from the sun.
Hmm.
See, a lot of people
Well,
don't know this.
well, I think also because they used to use the black coal around their eyelids.
Right.
I feel also it was also for protection from, how they always like say protection from the evil eye. I feel that there was a connection to that as well, because they were very mystical beings, and
Mhm.
they believed in ritual and the connection between where they are in the physical world and the spiritual, this, where they would go in the spiritual realm. But one of the things I want to say, I know because I've had a few past life regressions. One of them was in Egypt, and one that's very pronounced just as much as the Egyptian was is in the 1920s in New York, because I have a very strong connection to like the flapper era, the vaudeville era. I collect like old music sheets. I'm into Eddie Cantor. I'm into old movies,
Me too. Me too.
the music from that time period. I'll say kid a lot. And to me, it's just like, yeah, that's my vernacular. And that's exactly how people would talk in those days. If you listen to Lucille Ball, who came from that time period, she would say kid a lot. And
Right.
they would use like terms like what you were saying, the bomb. I think that came from that time period. They also had
Yes.
something called an expression called the chandelier. She's the chandelier. And I think that's a sexual connotation there. So we won't go into that, but
I had a friend that knew,
yeah,
met Lucille Ball when she was alive,
yeah,
and she would call everybody dear. Everything
dear.
was dear. She would
Hmm.
call, yes, dear. Hello,
Hmm.
dear. You know, she always used that word, dear. Today, if you say dear so and so in a letter, oh, you're like old fashioned. Nobody uses the word dear anymore. I mean,
It's
it's
a
so crazy, right?
I always love when I hear that, because it's an endearment. It's like
Yeah.
showing respect and being kind to a person. And those are the things that we have been detached from because of the decades that we've lived through. And now the young people in this era have no clue what it was like back then, and the wonderful things that people would do, and how they would honor one another through the language and through things that they do for one another. And it's a pity, it really is. I mean, I have some young people in my life who I consider, like one especially I consider like a niece to me, and I'm always cluing her in on the old movies, on the old music. We have wonderful talks together, and she absorbs this, and I feel like she's almost like a legacy in a way.
Tell
I'm
her to
passing it
watch
on.
tell her to watch Turner Classic Movies
Yeah,
or the
she loves.
movie channel. The movie channel is
She's
really good.
she's very much into the movies of the 30s and 40s, because I showed her a lot. She knows exactly who Elizabeth Taylor is, because I remember
Oh
hearing this
my
one
God. Is she, was
young
she
girl.
like, uh, her face
Oh,
was so stunning.
she
The
was just
most,
like perfect.
everything on that woman's face was perfect. The
All you want
eyes.
to do is just like stare at her,
I did.
it's-
I definitely would stare at her. I would say more than any other actress I've ever seen on the
Mhm.
silver screen. I think her face was the most beautiful. It was so asymmetrically perfect. The
It
shape of
was.
the eyes, the nose, the lips. And she didn't really have big lips like what they have today with those big lips,
Yeah.
but she had nice lips,
She's.
beautiful cheekbones. I swear, when I watched that movie Cleopatra, I
Mhm.
stare at her face because the costumes
Well, the
and the
costume's incredible.
makeup.
Yeah.
Oh
Mhm.
my God, she was so gorgeous.
Well,
Gorgeous.
one of my other favorites has always been Natalie Wood. I
Yeah,
loved Natalie
gorgeous
Wood,
too. Gorgeous
and
too.
Marilyn Monroe, because she had this
Beautiful. She's
just
my
perfect.
idol.
She's this natural beauty.
Gorgeous.
I mean, even when she wasn't wearing makeup, Marilyn had this fantastic natural beauty about her, and she had a sensitivity that was just you could feel the core of who she was.
Yeah,
Whenever
it's
you
so
you
sad what those people did to her in Hollywood, you know. Maybe
Yeah.
even our politicians, who the hell knows the real story behind what really happened to her. I don't really
Yeah.
believe she killed herself. I really don't. And,
Yeah.
it's so sad. But I mean, I recently I did a video and I put it on my TV show from a past interview that I did. And I had interviewed Ava, well, she don't call herself Ava, she calls herself Ava Astaire. And that was, that was Fred Astaire's daughter.
Oh, daughter, okay.
Yes, and I put in clips of all the movies, just clips after the interview, of all the movies. It's on my YouTube channel, of all the movies that he did with all the dancing skits, some by himself and some with other dancers, not just Ginger Rogers. I mean, he danced with so many fabulous stars. And I asked her, I said to her, what was your favorite movie that your father was in that he did? And she said, Funny Face.
I love Audrey Hepburn.
Audrey Hepburn, yes.
She's another one I love.
Gorgeous. Yeah. She was beautiful too. Oh my God,
absolutely.
Stunningly beautiful. So now we're going to get into some other questions about your show business life. Because that's what this is, darling. It's all show business.
It's all show business, yes.
So now we're going to get into your purpose and your books on spiritual a little bit later. But first I want to explore how you got into broadcasting and the introduction of working on independent shows. You have a history of producing shows for 15 years, right? I mean,
for over 15 years, yeah. I was always into drawing. Art was like my thing. So I went to the High School of Art and Design in Manhattan, and then to Parsons. And in between that point, I felt this need to get into filmmaking, video, something of that nature. If I felt like my guardian angels were pushing me, it was just like this very strong drawer.
I have to interrupt you for 1 second. Excuse my interruption, but I have to tell you, because you are into filmmaking and video, you're like the only person that I know that is so aware of the lighting. Your lighting on your face is perfect. And you know how many people I interview? They don't know how to light themselves. I'm interviewing them on Zoom, and there's no light on their face. They have no background. They look awful. But you are like the best, the perfectly lit person I've ever interviewed.
Well, it comes from years of being aware of how good a person can look in good lighting. So, so I try my best, because I don't exactly have a grid around me, but I do have lights, and I try to put as much lighting around me as possible. So before we, anytime I do any type of thing on camera, I always look around. Okay, what's going on? How do I look? Am I in a shadow? So, and I also got this because I wanted to have a really nice background when I do video, interviews or what have you. And because I had nothing but like a white.
But I've interviewed filmmakers and actors, and they don't know how to light themselves. Or they don't care. They don't care.
It's probably because they've had other people do it. See, when I started out, having started out in the independent level, you get your hands into everything. So once I started seeing this interest in video and going to classes and, school and things like that, I decided to look into like independent shows that were on cable to get more experience.
It was public access, right?
Public access. So back in like the late 80s, I found this show called Young, Gifted, and Broke. I lived in Manhattan, the Lower East Side at that point.
It sounds like that TV show, Single and Broke.
Oh, and it basically, it's like all of us, for the most part, who were involved in the show, we all lived on the Lower East Side. So the main producer would interview a lot of the artists, the musicians, the writers, actors, actresses, anybody involved in the Lower East Side. And I would be doing camera work. I would help with the lighting. Sometimes I would also produce my own shows. And that was the great part of Young, Gifted, and Broke. Everybody who was involved in the show could produce their own segments. Sometimes I would do the Halloween specials, because I loved Halloween. That was like my favorite holiday. And I did some documentaries. I did a documentary on Eddie Cantor, and I placed it on Young, Gifted, and Broke at that time, because he was like my main love. It's like I loved him. And because I knew, I sensed a connection between him and the 1920s. So that's where what the draw was. So what happened was I was always involved in every little aspect of it. And every time the people on my show would say, oh, it doesn't matter about the lighting, it doesn't matter about the audio. I said, of course it matters. I said, you have to learn how to do this properly. So I would drive them crazy. I would say, you're in the shadow, let's get the lighting up properly. So I was the one that was basically trying to get that technical level, because in those days we either had VHS camcorders, high 8, or we would get like equipment from Manhattan Cable at that point, because we were involved in Manhattan Cable. So I started like doing all these things myself. And then when I did location shooting, I would be there with all the equipment, getting all the cameras, shots, the B-rolls, everything. And then as years went on, when I moved out here I just left Staten Island. So when I moved out to Staten Island in about 2001, I got involved in CTV, which I know that you know about CTV in Staten Island. Right. And I became like a volunteer producer there, did a show called Alexander's Psychic Eye. And that was like my first psychic show that I ever did. And it was all done in the studio there. I did the scripts, I brought the talent on, I got everybody in place, got the crew. I knew exactly the graphics we needed, because by that time, I knew every aspect that needed to be done for a show. I knew how it should start, how it should end, how to get the questions together. My host, all she had to do was just like come in, look at the scripts, because she liked to look over the scripts, sit down. We got the lighting just perfect, got the shots just perfect. She had the questions.
So did you like being behind the scene more, or did you so you actually had a host. You weren't the host. There was somebody else host.
Yeah, at that point, it was a past spiritual teacher of mine. She asked me to help her out with a show. And we got involved, and because at that point I was always behind the scenes. I started behind the scenes doing all those aspects of doing shows.
Solomon told me that you produced a show with him in it. I guess they were asking questions.
Yeah, Hector Boza. He did Home Invaders. It was an entertainment show, a variety show for the hour.
And he said that you were amazing. This is what Solomon told me.
Just because I knew exactly all the things that needed to be, because
some of these filmmakers make movies and they don't really know what they're doing. They don't. That's why he said that about you, because he said she knew everything. She understood all the technical aspects of how to film a person, the lighting, the script. She was really good. Yeah, there's a lot of people that aren't.
I enjoyed working with Hector, because Hector's a very good friend of mine, and his show was very entertaining. And I would help out with camera, I would help out with directing. We also did a segment together called Film Talk, because as you know, I love old films and things like that. So we would talk about films, different genres, So I would put that segment together, and then we would, after when that was done, run to the next thing. He would get on, do his regular interviews. I'd get behind the camera or go into directing. So we were like racing around the set, depending upon what we needed to do. It was fun in a way. I mean, it was hard work, but it was fun, because we enjoyed creating something that
it didn't. When you like what you do, it don't really feel like work. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Now you did this for 15 years, right?
I worked on Psychic Eye for like 14 years. I continued with Hector's show for a little longer. And then I decided like around 2014 that I had to do something different. So by 2015, I decided to go to do shows on the internet, like Blog Talk Radio. So I did a show called Hidden Mysteries with a friend of mine. She was my co-host, named Reverend Maria DeAndrea. She's a metaphysical practitioner, shaman, you know, she is psychic, she does everything. So we would do a show each, I think once a month or once every other week, where we would do a show on Blog Talk. We would take a subject. It could be about herbalism, it could be about shamanism, it could be about crystals, whatever it was, we would talk about it. It felt like we were just like talking in our living rooms, you know. It was fun, you know. I would still have like a script together about what we would talk about, but we basically we let loose, you know, just speaking our minds. And I said, you know, I love this type of thing. I love being hosting or co-hosting. And then I decided to go to a video podcast called MQuest TV. And if people go to my website at miriamasilver.com, they'll see in the archives, I have some of those shows up. And those were a continuation of where I would host a show and do interviews with different types of people in the paranormal field. And then about maybe a year or 2 years ago, I started Rev Up and decided to do that as an audio podcast because I love radio. Somehow it connected me to something that I've always loved was
so
radio.
You never really stopped. You've been going and doing this, but it's evolved. It's changed and it's evolved. Because I was going to say, you know, you did this for 15 years. What made it end? But obviously it hasn't really ended because you just keep evolving and changing it. And
that's it. Because, you know, something that I always notice when you feel this sense, like your higher self is always communicating with you. If something feels great, your higher self is like saying, this is good, keep it going. If something is bothering you or you feel that you need to expand in life, your higher self is going to make that known to you. And I'm always, like I said, I'm very sensitive. I pick up on all these things. And there was a point like around 2014, 2015, I felt this like nudge to get going, like do something different. And I think it was to get me outside of behind the scenes, get me in front of the camera or get me on the mic. And I saw how it pushed me to write books. It pushed me to get my
that's
thoughts.
what I want to talk about. You know, you wrote 2 amazing books. You have 2 publications, Spiritual Cancer and A Life in Progress of a Practical Spiritualist. Why did you write these 2 books? Tell my audience.
Well, first of all, I never thought I could ever write a book because I thought it was like too beyond me. You know, it goes to show you how I was like keeping myself in a small place, you know. And then what I did was I started out with a life in progress of a practical spiritualist. I was looking at my life at that point. This was like 2014, 2015, somewhere in that point. And I was like saying to myself, you know, it's amazing where I started from and where I am right now. And I was noticing how you're on a spiritual journey. Everybody's on a spiritual journey, but you don't realize how you're moved along your path. It's like, it's such a subtle movement. It's like you're constantly spiritually moved from one spot to another, one place to another, but you don't realize this until you look back on all those years. So my first book, Practical Spiritualist, was based on looking back at those years and how the synchronicities just play a part in the backdrop of our lives. We don't realize it's there. We don't realize how we're being brought from one person to another to another. I felt like I was being brought from one spiritual teacher to another spiritual teacher to another spiritual teacher to expand my consciousness each and every time. And then when I went through in 2019, I went through a diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma. I knew immediately that this was a means for me to cleanse myself of the traumas I had in my childhood. So I felt the need to journal all the treatments I went through, all the experiences I went through, because I felt on some level it could help other people as well. Because I see a lot of people constantly putting a lot of information out there, their experiences, but I wanted to show people the connection to the spiritual level.
I watched your interview with this doctor,
Paul Mekas.
Paul Mekas. Yeah. And it was interesting how you said that you combined the science of the medicine of the doctors and the healing of the spiritualism. You married those 2 together. Right, to overcome this disease that you had, this cancer that you had. And that's really what everybody should do. Everybody should
Exactly.
really do that, because you don't, I had, like you, I had cancer too. I had breast cancer.
Okay.
And I knew I was going to be okay. You know, at first I was afraid, just like everybody else. Oh my God. You know. But you know, breast cancer does run in my family. So I always had like this feeling that it was going to happen to me. I was going to get breast cancer. I always had that feeling. So it's like, you know, it's not if, it's when, that kind of thing, you know. So, but when I did get the breast cancer, you know, I'm like, a lot of people tell me I'm like Joan Rivers. I make jokes all the time about things. So when I met the doctor and he told me, you know, you have breast cancer, you have a lump in your breast, I says, well, you know what? Take the breast off, take both my breasts off, and give me bigger ones. And he did, you know. So I mean, but all joking aside, it's a very, very scary illness. It's a very frightening thing, you know, but I always had like a good attitude about it, and I knew I was going to get through it and I would be okay. And like you know, you combine the two, you know, the science from the doctors and the what do they call that? The healing of the helioistic or
holistic.
That's
Holistic.
it. That's it.
What I knew, you know, because you know these innately, that anytime you have I call it a dis-ease. It means that the body is out of balance. It needs to be realigned. I knew that what was happening was that I had to get even more connected to the spiritual aspects, because I knew that this was anything that's manifested in a physical comes from a spiritual level of existence, because that's where everything comes through. So I had to realize that I had to connect with that side of me. I had to connect with that trauma that had existed for so many years and to get rid of it. So what I did was, because believe me, when I was told that I had cancer, I said, I was scared. I was scared like hell when he told me.
You were all human, of course we're scared.
And when he told me I had to have chemo, it was like, what? You know, it was like, I couldn't even contain myself.
Yeah,
like,
I got very sick from the chemo.
Yeah.
You know, I told people I didn't feel, it's weird. I didn't feel sick. I felt drained. I couldn't do anything. I had to literally lay in the bed and go to sleep. I used to tell people, it's not painful. You don't feel pain. What you feel is like you can't even pick your head up. And they gave me a very strong dose of chemotherapy. I says, I'm only 5'2", I says, and I weigh 100 pounds. I says, you can't give me what you give somebody else. You have to give me very little. So they came down on it, you know, and it was better. But I mean, the first experience, they had to put me in the hospital because it was I was so sick. Like I literally could not and I had a fever. I couldn't even pick my head up. That's how bad it was.
I had a lot of those same symptoms. And what I did was, because I knew that, thinking of the fact that this was, you know, toxins being placed into my body, what I would do is every time I would go to the transfusion center, I would immediately visualize what was going into those, you know, going inside of me in white light. I always surrounded in white light, because I knew that I needed to have something that would immediately put an intent of power into my body. And when you use white light, for instance, that's like the Christ consciousness light. It's a healing light. So you're infusing your body with a healing energy already, so that when you go through this experience, you're going to help heal and you're going to participate in the healing experience. And that's one of the things that I was trying to get put into the book, was the fact that we have to participate in our own healing. So I would,
you can't leave it all up to the doctor.
Yeah. Because first of all, like I said in the book, each doctor is just going to be dealing with their own aspects. Sorry, my cat Gracie is like, she wants to get involved here. So she's got to be on my lap.
Gracie. Wow, that's a big cat.
Yeah, she's my beauty here. So
Yeah.
in case you see a tail sticking up, it's her. So so what happened was I not only, I went through the chemo, I also I had supplementation. I did that. I also did aromatherapy, like essential oils. I was using that. I went through sound healing, the sound bowls, went through shamanic healings, reflexology, which is very helpful in getting toxins out of your system. I did a lot of different things. I did meditation, and and also one of the things that my naturopathic doctor said to me, he says, I want you to listen to comedy, whether it's audio, whether it's video, anything that you can find that makes you laugh, because you need to have something to whether you're laughing or crying, it's helping to cleanse your system. You're cleansing the emotional impact of the experience. So, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard this is different experiences, and that they've gone through. People have mentioned it. I mean, I believe that there's even yogis who teach like meditative laughing or something like that. You go into these retreats and you laugh your ass off. So I find it a very, sometimes it sounds stupid or ridiculous, but you know what? There's a reason why these things are out there, because they see the connection to it on a spiritual level. It helps you health-wise, it helps you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Yes,
and that's where we have to cleanse all those layers to heal.
Yes. Now, you are a licensed level aromatherapist and a spiritual healer. How did that happen? Tell us quickly, because we're coming to the end of the interview. Tell us quickly how that happened.
Okay, well, in 2018, after I broke an ankle, I decided to go into aromatherapy because I was always interested in that on some level. So I decided to take some classes in Manhattan. So I just, so I got the level 1 certificate on that. And with the spiritual healing, that came out organically through all my spiritual teachings over the years, that I sensed and I realized and I knew innately that we are all healers, and spiritually that we can heal not only ourselves but one another, because we're basically a lifeline from the source to the subject, because it just comes through us. So that's what
the human spirit and the human energy has amazing powers.
Yeah.
that most people don't even know exist.
Yeah.
Really? Isn't that true?
It is. It is.
Now tell my audience about your podcast called Rev Up and Awaken. The focus is on awakening the self to remembering its spiritual connection. Tell us more about it.
Well, it's basically what I do is either I'll do interviews with people or I'll do commentaries, and it's mainly to awaken people. I knew I wanted to be able to help people to remember that they're spirit, because we're so locked into the physical form and lifestyle, or I should say life that we're in, that we don't really see the connection to a spiritual form, and that we're basically just energy, and we forget about it. And that's really where we need to help each other to remember who we really are, and that we have more power than we realize. And society doesn't help us in that regard. All we can do is, find spiritual teachers that help us to come to that conclusion, and just to do work on a spiritual level helps to bring our vibrational levels up, so we can connect to that spiritual aspect of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what the show is about. It's just to help get the consciousness levels up, to rev you up and get you going.
Rev you up. Is that how you got the title? Rev it up.
Rev up and awaken. Yeah, rev up and awaken.
So now, where do you find your guests? How do you find them?
Some of the people I know, like Blanca Beyer, she's a spiritual teacher of mine. She's a shamanic healer. She's an elder shamanic healer. She's a writer, author. I have her on periodically because she always has wonderful subjects to talk about. I've had a lot of people on to talk about, herbalism, shamanism, crystals, just
My
awakening.
cousin, I have two friends. I have my cousin. I told you about my cousin that she works in. She's actually
Yeah.
a record engineer. She knows how to create the albums. She's worked with all kinds of famous people, like Britney Spears and Michael Jackson and really famous Cher, everybody. She's worked with everybody, but she is also psychic and intuitive, and she reads the cards. She works for a crystal shop, and she'll sometimes ask the crystal. And I have another friend, Monica Randall. She's a very famous best-selling author, and she wrote about the Gold Coast of Long Island, and she is also intuitive. She will never say she is psychic, but she'll ask the crystal things too. She'll ask the crystal, So you believe in the crystal. You can only ask them. You can only ask them.
Yeah.
You can only ask it a yes or no question. Am I right about that?
I don't know it that well as far as in terms of I'm still learning about crystals. So, but I know that I'm attracted to a lot of different, in fact, my house has got crystals everywhere. I'm attracted to the vibration of it. I'm attracted to the colors and the vibration of the colors as well. So I'm drawn to it in that regard. I know a lot of people do use it as a means of getting information. I approach it in a different angle.
Right.
And if I'm attracted to something, I know there's a reason for it. So I leave it up to other people if that's their mode of using it in terms of using it to learn about, to get psychic information if they want to. But I mean, that's my draw to it. I want to use it for that reason. But and one of the other things that I do on my show is I do a lot of commentaries about the things that go on in our world, just to make people aware of the fact that, we're just not aware of a lot of the things that are of our true nature. We think that what we see and how we go along, go to, to jobs each day and how, in our family life, that we think that's all there is, but there's so much more.
There's so much more. There's so much more. And right now, as you know, our world is in a turmoil.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I think the population of the world has become awakened, and as I am awakened and as you are. And I think because of our awakening, we all have that energy, that source of energy that is going to change it. We are all going to change it. I know that, and I believe in that. And people even say to me, I can't sleep at night. I can't sleep at night. I says, oh no, I sleep good. I sleep good because I know everything's going to be okay. But I want you to tell my audience, because we're at the end of the interview, where we could go to find out more information about your beautiful, beautiful self.
My website is miriamasilver.com. And on there, you can find Rev Up and Awaken. You can also, there's tabs to go to my two books, if people feel they want to purchase it. I also have a separate publishing website called spiritualcancerbook.com. That's specifically for spiritual cancer, my most current book. And I'm also on Facebook. I also go by Miriam A. Silver. So
Mimi, I like Mimi.
Well, Mimi, I use as
Mimi was French. Mimi was a past life. You were French. You were a French flapper.
You know what? I do believe there was an aspect of me in French because I love Charles Aznavour and Edith Piaf. So I know there's a part, and I've always wanted to go to France, and see that country.
Oh, you have to go. Paris is the most beautiful city. Yeah. But I'm going to give you a big pink champagne kiss because I wish I was there to kiss you, but we're on Zoom, so that's impossible. But my energy is going to go out into the universe. Pink champagne kisses. And Miriam, Mimi, darling, thank you so much for coming on my show. And we will be back in a moment, darlings, with more celebrity interviews. Keep watching. Pink champagne kisses. Welcome back, darling.
darlings. I hope you enjoyed my fabulous interview with Miriam Silver. Everyone calls her Mimi. That's her little nickname, and I just adore it. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And as you know, my YouTube channel is all about celebrity Zoom interviews and fabulous shopping hauls at Amazon, Shein, Fashion Nova, and also Rainbow. And again, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I always publish a video every Sunday or every Monday. And I love you all, darlings. And pink champagne kisses.
Hello, darlings. You've all heard of Marilyn Monroe. Some of you know Bridget Bardot. Well, now it's time for the Cognac show. I said Cognac, ooh, ooh. I said Cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm a bubbly blonde, fabulously dressed to impress. One of a kind girl. I was brought into this world wrapped up in pearls. I love to mingle, though my husband reminds me I'm not single. I meet and greet both the famous and the elite. I ride in limousines, drinking the finest champagne, wearing furs, dazzling diamond jewelry. A girl can't complain. I live the upscale life, dining in the finest restaurants, eating the best caviar for free. And no matter how much I enjoy cognac, ooh, ooh. I said cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh. This has been a Crybaby Productions, darlings.